Hello everybody and welcome to the commented games with Antelacus. Antelacus, it's me, an Italian national chess master. I will comment with you some of my daily chess games, those I consider the most interesting ones I played recently on the platform chess.com. The game I consider today is a quick knockout, 1 day per move. That means 1 day per move. It's a daily game, and it ended some day before. And in my opinion, is a very interesting game. So let's go to the game. The game is a Caro-Kann. I was white, you can see in red letters. On the left of the screen, my name and the name of my opponent and the tournament. It was a quick knockout. That means, I repeat, 1 day per move. Okay, that's a Caro-Kann. I decided to play the exchange variation. It's a very calm variation, but very interesting because black can pay great attention to the sequence of moves. For example, the first move is bishop d3, taking this diagonal. Before, black can play itself bishop f5. So this is all theory. Knight f6 is not the most usual move because is knight c6 the move, and after knight c6 c3 follows, and only now knight f6. But this is not a problem because black played knight f6 and after c3 knight c6, re-entering in the main variation. And I played bishop f4. This is so-called the Rubinstein variation. I didn't know that. I discovered it after the game. And it's particular, this opening, this variation, because white develops his bishops before his knights. And that's very strange, because, when you are a beginner, your instructor tells you, develop your knights before your bishops. That's a general rule. It's better. But not ever, because in this particular variation, white develops his bishop first. There is a very precise reason, because white wants to avoid bishop g4 pinning an f3 knight. So after bishop g4, I played queen b3, the standard move. And here black played queen d7. There is also queen c8, that's an alternative. And the idea of queen c8 is because sooner or later white will play a knight on e5 to avoid the queen to be attacked on d7. And that's another idea. Okay, queen d7, absolutely playable move. Knight d2, very important, not knight f3, because after knight f3, black can obviously play bishop takes, pawn takes, and white's structure is completely broken. So knight d2 is the correct move. And now you see why white decides to develop his bishops first. e6 and knight f3. And now if white takes the knight, knight takes, and the e5 square is in white's hand. White has the bishop pair and is slightly better. Nothing more, but for me it was enough after the opening. But black decides to play another move, bishop d6. This is considered the best move. Trading this very dangerous black squared bishop. Bishop takes, queen takes, and now I decided to play the most obvious move, castle, but to complete the variation, there is queen takes b7. White wins a pawn, but I absolutely don't like this move, because after rook b8, queen a6 only move, and black plays castle. Of course, rook takes b2 is not possible, because bishop b5 and white is winning material. At least an exchange. At least rook takes b5 is the only move, because the knight is under attack. Other moves are bad moves. You can see by yourself. So after rook takes b5, queen takes b5, white is practically winning. Is an exchange up, and black has no compensation. But of course, black doesn't take and plays castle. And now rook takes b2 can be a threat. Castle. Rook takes b2 is not the best move in this position, because black has better. Rook b6. Where does the white queen go? The only really possible move is queen a3, because, for example, queen a4, rook takes b2, and now bishop b5 has no threats. So rook b6, queen a3, queen takes, pawn takes, and okay, white is a pawn up, but the pawn is a very sad pawn. I think here white has absolutely no advantage, and the position is more or less equal. c3 is weak, a3 is weak, a2 is weak, and black has rook b8, rook fb8, taking the column. There is no bishop pair for white, so I think I don't like this idea to take on b7. And after queen takes d6, I play simply castle. Castle. Now queen takes b7 is the same story as before. And now the most obvious idea for white is to put a rook on e1 to control e5 and to centralize a rook. But which rook belongs to e1? This rook or this rook? Okay, these two rook moves have different plans. Rook a e1 has a plan of knight e5 and f4, and if possible f5. That's absolutely a possible idea. But I decided to play with another idea. Rook f e1. To use this rook on a1 to push the pawn a4, a5, and to use it in another column, a column or c column, or also a d column. And I played the rook f e1. And my idea was to follow a very recent game between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja, played in the tournament of St. Louis very recently, 19 September 2020. But just a moment, played in a different chess platform. And be careful, because this game was a blitz game, and the blitz game cannot be taken for a very important game to follow it. And in that game, Firouzja was black and played the same move my opponent played against me. and it's knight e7. Frankly speaking, I don't like very much this move because the a5 square becomes weak. The idea is, of course, to play bishop f5. And bishop f5 can be played immediately. But after bishop takes, pawn takes, very probably black doesn't like to have this isolated pawn. But in my opinion, this is absolutely playable because the knight will come on e4 with some compensation for the broken pawn structure. Anyway, black decides to play knight e7. And now bishop f5 can be a pretty good idea because it trades this very strong bishop without breaking the pawn structure. But with this idea, I think bishop g6 can be considered better. With a bishop h5, with the idea of bishop g6, can be considered better because, for example, after bishop h5, if I play a4 anyway, bishop g6, bishop takes, pawn takes, okay. The pawn structure is not perfect for black, but I think this is absolutely better than the pawn structure with the pawn on f5 and an isolated pawn on e4. So this idea to trade the bishop, that in my opinion is the only possible idea here, is good enough with bishop h5. My opponent played knight e7, and I was very surprised for a very precise reason. I had the intention to play like Carlsen. Play like Carlsen can be a good idea any moment, I think. And I found that my opponent played exactly the same move Alireza Firouzja played in the St. Louis Blitz. And I asked me, my opponent is trying to repeat that game. That game finished with a draw, and the post-mortem analysis demonstrated that white was ever slightly better, but didn't manage to win that game. Okay, and I decided to improve that game, if possible. And the first move is the same move Carlsen played, knight e5. That's a very logical move. The knight is no more on c6, so knight e5 can be strong. Bishop f5, current, absolutely, and a4. The move Carlsen played during the mentioned game. And now my opponent changed the move, playing rook a b8. That can be a logical move. But during the game, Firouzja played bishop takes d3, b4. Knight takes, and only now rook a b8. Can be this a good idea, a better idea? What's better, rook a b8 immediately or trading the bishops before? In my opinion, there is no difference at this moment. But sooner or later, black will trade on d3. But this knight on d3, winning a tempo because it takes back the bishop, can go to c5. And the other knight can be played on f3. So, rook a b8 without trading the bishop can be a good idea. And Firouzja played. My opponent played rook a b8. And now I thought, oh, my opponent played knight e7 following that game. But now changed the Firouzja move. Can be an improvement? I don't know. I played a5, the same move Carlsen played, not exactly in this position, but if now black plays bishop takes d3, the position is the same. And the position was bishop takes d3, knight takes d3, knight g6, g3, and the game ended with a draw in 38 moves. The position is, in my opinion, white has a slight edge, very slight edge. Okay, my opponent played a completely different move, and now I have the suspicion that he was not following the Carlsen-Firuza game, because he played a6. Frankly speaking, I don't really understand this move, because it opens a weakness here, has no real threat, but when he played a6, I didn't suspect which idea was hidden behind. I played rook a4, and I'm following the game Carlsen-Firuza, because Carlsen played rook a4 with the idea rook b4. And I suppose a6 is not good for black in this particular position. But after rook a4, my opponent played b5, and that was his idea. And b5, in my opinion, is a very suspicious move. It's not a blunder, of course, but it's an imprecision, not precise move. Because, of course, white takes, rook takes, and queen c2. And that's very interesting, because now the position, the pawn structure is very interesting, because black has a weak pawn on a6 that I can attack with rook a1 and so on. But this structure is a strong structure if I can defend b2 pawn without great problems. And if you notice, this structure is a typical structure with color reversed colors of a minority attack. Black has a pawn on b7, pushes and pushes. Takes on c3, takes on c3, and the c3 pawn is weak. But this is reversed colors. Normally it's white, for example, in the Queen's Gambit, and black has the pawn on d5, on c6, on b7, and on a7. And white has no pawns here, and plays b4 and b5. And here the position is the same with reversed colors. But there is a particular, very important particular, in my opinion, the c5 square. If I can manage a knight on c5, I can play b4. And white's position is very, very better. As in the Queen's Gambit, when white plays b4 and b5, must be very careful that black cannot play a move like, for example, knight e8, knight e6, knight c. In that case, black is okay. And here is the same with reversed colors. And I calculated exactly that I will play b4, knight b3, and knight c5 before black can play rook c8, attacking the c3 pawn after b4. And I exactly calculated. My opinion is exactly calculated. And my opinion, and my opponent played a bad move. Rook b8. Rook b8 favorites white, because it's obvious that I will play b4. And that's a tempo. Rook fb8 is a tempo. Rook c8 was better immediately. Rook c8 was better immediately. Because b4 now is possible. Okay, it's always possible, but at least black doesn't waste a tempo, because the game continued rook b8, b4, and rook c8. That's obviously wrong. That's obviously wrong. I play knight b3 immediately. I'm a tempo, up respect of the analysis and how to play now. Black is in trouble because knight c5 is a threat and will be played next move. And the knight to c5 attacks the a6 pawn, and very probably the a6 pawn is lost. And notice that with the knight on e5, the knight on e5 controls the c6 square, and black has no counterplay on the c5. Okay, knight c5 is always possible, but here the rook on b6 is a very poor rook, and this is the result of the b5 push. Okay, now blacks decide to take. I took with the queen and not with the knight, because now there is a knight on b3 that goes to c5. I don't need to take with the knight on e5 to go to c5, because now after bishop takes d3, queen takes d3, I have an active queen that attacks the a6 pawn, and very probably this position is winning for white. If it's not winning, it's very near. My opponent played knight e7, that's a very logical move, and I played knight c5, because black cannot take on c5, because there is knight takes c5, b takes c5, there is a fork, winning immediately a rook. So knight c5, black decided to trade the other knight, that's very logical. Rook takes, of course I take with the rook, because the e5 square is very important for me. Knight g6, rook e1, and knight f4. Knight f4 maybe is not the best move. And here, of course, after the game, I took a computer analysis, and the computer told me, oh, you didn't play the best move. The best move is queen f1. I think this is a terrible move. This is a real computer move. And okay, a computer has no ideas, but the idea, if you can tell that, is to play g3 without having a check on h3. I think this is not a good idea. And queen f1, of course, has the idea to continue attacking the a6 pawn, and that's a logical move for a computer, taking a pawn. But I'm not in a hurry. I played queen a3. I think this is a better move, because I'm threatening g3 anyway. After check, king g2, the knight is lost. And my opponent, after queen e3, played h6. That's a logical move, because from h3 the knight can go to g5, and that can be a move. And I started to attack the pawn for the third time, threatening to take the pawn immediately. Not, I think immediately can be taken. And black decided to defend himself with rook c6. That's a very, very terrible move, because now these two rooks has really no moves, completely not elastic pieces. Maybe rook a8 was better. I don't know if rook a8 can be better. Okay, the rook is not a great rook on a8 either, but I think rook c6 is a very bad move. For the moment, the pawn is safe. And now I play g3, knight check, king g2, knight g5. Okay, and here, in my opinion, this is the most difficult move of the game for me, because when I saw by far this position, I was convinced that my position was absolutely winning. The only possible counterplay for black was f6 and e5, but this can be very dangerous. And also knight e4 is a threat, because c3 remains weak, very weak. How to play in this position? And I decided to play f3. I wasn't convinced it's 100%, because this move weakens my king, weakens the second rank, and I was convinced that h4 sooner or later I will be played, and f3 is not a move I like. But after analyzing the idea of knight e4 sooner or later, I decided to play f3 because knight e4 could become very annoying. Okay, knight takes e5 will be never a threat, but the knight on e4 can be very, very annoying. So I decided to play f3. And this move, I discovered, was the better move for white. But I can assure you, this was the most difficult move in the entire game. Okay, after f3, I don't know what to play with black, but f6 seems to be absolutely logical. Because if black can play e5, and the position can change, I place queen d3, and there was an alternative. Queen d3, okay, e5 will come very soon. Next move, black will play e5. And maybe e4 also. So I must attack this pawn for the fourth time. But with queen b3 or with queen e2, probably is the same story. And I decided to play queen d3 because the queen here controls this very important diagonal. Okay, this queen attacks a pawn and controls a great diagonal. This is a very strong queen. But there is a problem. After e5, e4 attacks the queen. And now there is a problem because my king is on g2. And if I take, take, knight takes, queen d5, and suddenly I lose a piece. Or I'm in trouble because my king is on g2, and I cannot move my king. So queen d3 or queen e2 was a very difficult task. And I played queen d3. According to the program, queen d3 and queen d2 are the same story. I prefer to play queen d3 to control this square. Okay, e5, only move, and I took the pawn on a6. Now I'm a pawn up, but black managed to create some counterplay. And here takes, and here there is a problem because black played e4, and that's absolutely comprehensible. But what about rook takes a6? Obviously, I calculated it. Queen takes, knight takes, and knight e6. What's now? Because I cannot play knight c7 taking this pawn. But fortunately, I have a winning sequence. b5 takes, push, knight c6, b7, promoting, and the endgame is winning because I'm a knight up. So very easy. But after b5, just a moment. No, sorry. After knight takes a6, black can play a different move. Knight e6, attacking the d4 pawn. I'm a pawn up, but it's not absolutely obvious if this position is winning for white. Let's play b5 anyway, as in the previous variation. King f7, because now b6, knight d8, and black will stop the pawn on b7 or on b8. It depends how white continues. Knight c7, winning the d5 pawn, winning this pawn because king e6 is not possible. Takes, king e7, check, king e6, knight e3, threatening a check on f5. And I think white should be winning, but I'm not so convinced. It's a long task. It's a very long task. 2 pawns up, but don't forget my king is very passive. This king is very active, and these 2 pawns are very weak, really. And I don't know if this position is really winning. I think it's winning, but very, very long task. Fortunately, my opponent didn't trade all the pieces and decided to play e4. That's completely losing, but I repeat, it's absolutely understandable. Why? Because there is a check on a8, king f7, king h7 is even worse, or is it the same story? Because now the queen on d3, now you can notice that the queen on d3 pins everything on this. And now queen c4, okay, I show you. Knight takes, queen d5, and it's black who wins. For example, rook a8, f5, completely lost position for white, because I'm losing a piece. So I cannot take. But of course, I can play queen c4. And in this position, I stop to analyze because I'm threatening d5, and then queen d4, and my position is absolutely overwhelming. This should be a winning position. I'm not only a pawn up, but also I'm threatening queen g8 check. The king starts marching, h4, the knight must move, I will take on e4. I stopped analyzing here because I was sure that this position was winning. And because I'm playing a lot of games, 1 day per move, 3 days per move, lot of games, many games. And I cannot spend so much time for a single game. And I decided to stop here my analysis. And I think I was absolutely winning. He played king f7. And king f7, in my opinion, is even worse. Because now I can simply take twice. Oh, here, maybe he took with the pawn, but knight takes c4 maybe was slightly better. Because knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, rook takes. Oh, that's not possible because the checkmate here, but after queen takes, maybe black can play a move like queen d7 or something like that. Okay, he didn't play it. He played pawn takes, check on c4, of course. The king starts marching, king g6 is the only move. And now d5. d5, attacking the rook, stopping queen d5 with a pin, attacking the rook. Here he played rook c7, maybe rook b6 was better because I have no rook a6 at the end of the variation. I will show you. And he played rook c7, h4, and that's winning, completely winning. And the e4 pawn will fall next move. I will be 2 pawns up, and now I'm winning 3 best pawn. That's completely winning position. h4, knight f7, I think knight f7 is the only move. Check, f5, again only move. h5 check, that's very easy. And very easy to calculate. King f6, okay, if king takes is very easy. Queen takes, and now g5 or knight g5, same story, rook a1. And black will be checkmating next move. So after h5 check, maybe the best move was king h7, losing another pawn, but playing g6. And now here, okay, queen takes, check, takes, 3 pawns up. Okay, but the knight will go, the king is more active. Okay, it's completely lost, but I cannot move the pawns, push pawns for the moment. Okay, maybe this was the best defense. And he played king f6, queen h4 check, and everything is easy now because king e5 is checkmating one move, and g5 is the same story as knight g5 he played in the game, pawn takes, and rook a6 win with the queen. He played knight g5. I don't know if he overlooked rook a6 or not, or he hoped for I played another move, and he resigned. And in my opinion, this is a very interesting game with some crucial moments. The crucial moments are this one. When I play rook a4 with idea rook b4, and he played b5, that is the wrong idea. Take, take, and queen c2. And when I played rook a4 in this position, I played rook a4, I was absolutely sure that b5 was a mistake, because I was absolutely sure that my knight on d2 will reach the c5 square. I was absolutely sure, because if it wouldn't be possible, black b5 would be a very good move. It's not the case. And rook b8 is another mistake, because it's wastes a tempo. As you can easily see, knight c5. And then the other crucial position is this one. When I played f3, I must admit that I wasn't absolutely sure that f3 was the correct move. But I didn't see anything else, and a computer analysis confirmed me after the game that f3 was a very good move. I don't know if it was a bad move. I didn't remember if it considers f3 as the best move, but a better move enough, yes. f6, and here the position is winning, is a winning position for white, but black played I don't know why he played e4 instead of taking the rook on a6. Very probably he saw that the other variation was losing and tried to create some counterblock, but this makes things worse if possible. Okay, and then that's very easy, because black has only forced moves and white wins in every variation. Okay. Thank you very much for following this game. I think this game was very interesting. Follow me on Twitch, follow me on YouTube, and you will find some other games, commented chat games with Antelacus. Thank you very much, and see you next time, next game.